Shadows of the past. Dominic Vega stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office. Manhattan sprawled beneath him like a kingdom he'd conquered. His reflection stared back. Tailored suit, precise haircut, eyes that rarely softened. At 37, he'd built Vega Capital into one of the most aggressive investment firms in the city. A fortress constructed from ambition and distrust. "The curator is here, Mr. Vega," his assistant announced through the intercom. Dominic pressed the button. "Send her in." The corporate art collection had been his predecessor's passion project. To Dominic, it was merely an investment, another asset to maintain. He turned as the door opened, prepared for the usual deference he encountered. The woman who entered defied his expectations. She carried herself with quiet confidence, her dark hair falling in waves past her shoulders, her gaze direct as she extended her hand. "Sophia Lynn, thank you for making time today." Her handshake was firm, her smile professional but not ingratiating. Something about her seemed familiar, though he couldn't place it. "Your reputation precedes you, Ms. Lynn. The Garrison Gallery speaks highly of your eye for emerging talent." He gestured toward the chairs at his conference table. "Though I'm curious why someone of your caliber is interested in a corporate collection." Sophia sat, arranging her portfolio on the table. "Every collection tells a story. I'm interested in what yours might become." What she didn't say was that she already knew the story of Vega Capital all too well. 3 years ago, her brother Michael's gallery had been among the casualties when Dominic's firm abruptly pulled funding from several arts organizations during a market correction. Michael had never recovered from the blow, financially or emotionally. "I have no sentimental attachment to any of these pieces," Dominic said, waving dismissively at the artwork surrounding them. "If they need to be replaced with more valuable acquisitions, so be it." Sophia studied him, searching for remorse, finding none. "Art isn't just about monetary value, Mr. Vega. In my experience, Ms. Lynn, everything has its price." Their eyes met, a silent challenge passing between them. For a moment, Dominic felt an unexpected spark of interest, not just in her striking features, but in the intelligence behind her eyes, the absence of intimidation in her posture. As she began presenting her vision for the collection, Dominic found himself actually listening. Her passion was evident, her knowledge impressive. He watched her hands move expressively as she spoke, her eyes lighting up when discussing particular artists. "You're proposing quite the overhaul," he noted when she finished. "Your collection could be more than a tax write-off," she replied. "It could reflect the innovation you claim to value." Her subtle critique wasn't lost on him. Dominic leaned forward. "And you think you understand what I value, Ms. Lynn?" Sophia held his gaze. "I think there's more depth to you than the business pages suggest. The question is whether you're willing to reveal it." From the doorway, Marcus Reed, Dominic's right-hand man and oldest friend, observed their exchange with narrowed eyes. He'd seen many people try to get close to Dominic over the years, for money, for connections, for leverage. Something about this woman set off warning bells. 2 months, Dominic said finally. "Show me what you can do." As Sophia gathered her materials, their fingers brushed. For the briefest moment, Dominic felt something he hadn't experienced in years, genuine curiosity about another person. Neither realized it was the first step on a path that would change them both irrevocably. Beneath the surface, 3 weeks into the project, Dominic found himself lingering in the halls of Vega Capital, ostensibly inspecting the changes Sophia was making to the collection. The truth was more complicated. He was seeking her out, drawn to her perspective that challenged his own carefully constructed worldview. "This one's interesting," he commented, pausing before a new installation, a series of interconnected wire sculptures that cast intricate shadows across the wall. Sophia glanced up from her clipboard. "It represents connection and consequence, how one action affects everything around it." She studied his reaction. "Not your usual preference for power landscapes and bull sculptures." Dominic smiled slightly. "Perhaps my tastes are evolving, or perhaps there was more beneath the surface all along." They had fallen into this pattern, conversations, that began about art but veered into territory that felt increasingly personal. Today, they ended up in the employee cafe long after normal hours, takeout containers between them. "You built all this from nothing," Sophia said, gesturing to the building around them. "That's impressive." "I built it by understanding that sentiment is a liability in business," Dominic replied, twirling pasta around his fork. "People make poor decisions when emotions are involved. And what about in life? Do you apply the same principle?" The question caught him off guard. "I don't separate the two." Sophia leaned forward. "That sounds lonely." For a moment, his carefully maintained facade cracked. "It's efficient." Later that night, alone in her apartment, Sophia stared at the folder hidden in her desk drawer. Newspaper clippings, financial records, evidence of how Vega Capital had systematically undercut smaller businesses, including her brother's gallery. Michael had never recovered from the loss, still working odd jobs and battling depression. "I met with him again," she told her brother over the phone. "And is he the monster we thought?" Michael asked. Sophia closed her eyes. "It's complicated." "Don't tell me you're falling for him," Michael said, his voice sharpening. "Of course not," she replied too quickly. "I'm just saying people aren't always what they seem." Across town, Dominic sat in his penthouse reviewing reports, but his mind kept drifting to Sophia, her laugh, her challenging questions, the way she saw through his practiced responses. He hadn't felt this connected to anyone since before his rise to power, before he'd learned that trust was for the naive. "You're distracted lately," Marcus commented the next morning, dropping a stack of contracts on Dominic's desk. "It wouldn't have anything to do with our new art consultant, would it?" Dominic's expression cooled. "She has interesting perspectives on the collection." "I'm sure that's all you find interesting about her." Marcus hesitated. "I ran a background check. Standard procedure. And nothing concerning. Impressive credentials, though I noticed a gap in her employment history around 3 years ago." Dominic waved dismissively. "The recession affected everyone." Marcus studied his friend. "Just be careful. You haven't shown interest in anyone since Vanessa, and we both remember how that ended." Later that week, Dominic invited Sophia to a gallery opening. It wasn't a date, he told himself, just professional courtesy. Yet when she arrived in a midnight blue dress that caught the light as she moved, professionalism was the furthest thing from his mind. The evening blurred into a haze of conversation, shared observations, and lingering glances. They ended up walking along the High Line after midnight, the city glittering around them. "Why art?" Dominic asked. "What drew you to it?" Sophia considered her answer carefully. "Art tells the truth when people can't. It reveals what we hide." She looked directly at him. "Even from ourselves." When he walked her to her door, the moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Dominic leaned forward, his hand gently touching her cheek. Their lips met in a kiss that started tentative but deepened, breaking something open in both of them. As she pulled back, guilt and desire warred within Sophia. She was supposed to be gathering evidence, planning his downfall, not falling for him. Yet as his fingers intertwined with hers, she wondered if there was another way forward, one that didn't require either of them to break. Fault lines. The morning light filtered through Dominic's bedroom windows, casting golden patterns across the tangled sheets. Sophia traced her fingers along his shoulder, memorizing the moment. The past month had transformed everything she thought she knew about him and herself. "What are you thinking?" he murmured, pulling her closer. "That I never expected this," she answered honestly. Their relationship had evolved with an intensity that surprised them both. Behind closed doors, the ruthless businessman became someone else entirely, attentive, vulnerable at times, his characteristic control giving way to genuine passion. With Sophia, Dominic found himself sharing thoughts he'd never voiced aloud, doubts about decisions made, regrets carefully hidden. For Sophia, each revelation made her mission more impossible. The evidence folder remained untouched in her drawer as weeks passed. "I need to show you something," Dominic said one evening, leading her to his home office. He unlocked a drawer and removed an old photograph, a teenage boy with two younger siblings outside a modest apartment building. This was me at 17, raising my brother and sister after our parents died. Sophia took the photo, her fingers trembling slightly. You never mentioned siblings. Marco died of an overdose 10 years ago. Elena doesn't speak to me anymore. His voice was flat, controlled. I made promises I couldn't keep. To protect them, to give them everything. Some costs I didn't anticipate. She searched his face. What happened? I became someone they didn't recognize. He took back the photo, his expression closing. Someone who understood that in this world, you either take or you're taken from. That night, unable to sleep beside him, Sophia slipped into his home office. The ethical lines she'd already crossed burned in her conscience, but Michael's face, hollow-eyed after losing everything, drove her forward. She needed to understand what had happened to the boy in that photograph. His computer password took 3 attempts, his sister's birthday. Within minutes, she found the files on the art's funding cuts, including her brother's gallery. Internal memos revealed Dominic had specifically targeted smaller organizations to protect relationships with larger institutions. It was business, a voice said from the doorway. Sophia froze, then slowly turned to face Dominic. The vulnerability of earlier had vanished, replaced by cold fury. Digging for something specific? He asked. The truth, she managed, her voice barely steady. About Linden Street Gallery. About my brother. Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed immediately by betrayal. Michael Lynn. That's the connection I couldn't place. You destroyed him, Sophia said, rising from the chair. He trusted your firm's commitment. When you pulled the funding without warning, I remember the gallery, Dominic cut in. One of dozens affected by necessary cuts during the recession. Necessary? You specifically targeted smaller galleries while protecting your friend's investments. She pointed to the screen. It's right here in your own notes. Something flickered across Dominic's face, recognition, perhaps even regret, before hardening again. So this was your plan all along? Get close to me for what? Revenge? Information? Initially, yes, she admitted, the truth finally spilling out. I wanted to expose what you did. But then I got to know you, and I thought maybe what? I'd beg forgiveness? Make amends? His laugh was harsh. You played me perfectly, Sophia. I actually believed... He stopped himself. Believed what? She pressed. That you were different. That this was real? He gestured between them, his expression coldly composed once more. I forgot my own rule. Everything has its price. I just didn't realize how steep yours would be. Before she could respond, his phone rang. Marcus's name flashed on the screen. Perfect timing, Dominic said, answering. You were right about Ms. Lynn. It seems she has quite the personal vendetta. The last thing Sophia saw before walking out was the photograph on his desk. The hopeful boy who had somehow become the man now, watching her leave with empty eyes. Broken truths. 2 weeks after their confrontation, Dominic sat in his office reviewing acquisition proposals with mechanical efficiency. The art on the walls had been returned to their original locations, Sophia's vision for the collection abandoned along with everything else. The board approved the Meridian takeover, Marcus reported, dropping a folder on the desk. When Dominic merely nodded, Marcus sighed. You should be celebrating. This is the deal you've been working toward for months. I'm aware. Are you? Because you've been functioning on autopilot since... Don't. Dominic's tone left no room for discussion. Marcus leaned against the desk. You need to hear this. I ran a deeper background check on Sophia Lynn after everything happened. He paused. Her brother attempted suicide last year. Dominic's head snapped up. After losing the gallery, he fell into depression. Medical bills, therapy, she's been supporting him entirely. That's why she took the job with us. Not just revenge. She needed the money. The information hit Dominic like a physical blow. He remembered Michael Lynn now, earnest, passionate about emerging artists, overextended financially. Just another name on a spreadsheet when the cuts were made. You did what was necessary for this company, Marcus continued, misreading Dominic's silence. She was using you to get information, possibly for a lawsuit. We're better off with her gone. Dominic stared at the city beyond his window. What happened to us, Marcus? When did we become the people who justify anything as long as the numbers work? That's business. You taught me that. And what has it cost us? Later that night, Dominic found himself driving to Michael Lynn's apartment building in Queens. He sat in his car for nearly an hour, watching the modest entrance. Eventually, a thin man emerged, a shadow of the energetic gallery owner Dominic vaguely remembered from arts events years ago. The weight of consequence settled on Dominic's shoulders. He had built his empire on the principle that sentiment was weakness, that calculated decisions were the only path to success. Looking at Michael Lynn, he couldn't maintain the lie any longer. Across town, Sophia sat surrounded by cardboard boxes in her apartment. After the confrontation with Dominic, she'd lost not only him, but also her professional reputation. Marcus had made sure of that with a few strategic calls. Her phone rang. Michael. "How are the interviews going?" he asked. She forced cheerfulness into her voice. "Good. A few promising leads." "You're a terrible liar," Michael said gently. "Listen, I got the strangest call today from Vega Capital." Sophia tensed. "What did they want?" "They're establishing a new fund for arts organizations affected by their previous cuts. They asked me to consult on the selection committee." He paused. "Full salary, plus potential to reopen the gallery with their backing." "That's..." Sophia struggled to find words. "What did you tell them?" "That I'd think about it." Michael's voice softened. "Did something happen between you and Vega that you're not telling me?" Sophia closed her eyes, memories flooding back. Dominic's rare laugh, the way he looked at her when he thought she couldn't see, the gentle way he'd hold her after they made love. "It's complicated," she finally said. "Life usually is," Michael replied. "But I've been thinking, holding on to anger hasn't healed me. Maybe it's time to try something else." After they hung up, Sophia found herself retrieving the evidence folder from her desk, the mission that had led her to Dominic in the first place. Inside was something she hadn't noticed before, a newspaper profile of Dominic from years ago, mentioning his siblings. The photograph showed a determination in his eyes that she recognized, the same look she'd had when fighting for her brother. For the first time, she saw the full truth. They were mirror images, both willing to cross lines for family, both haunted by what they'd lost along the way. That night, she wrote him a letter she never intended to send, pouring out everything, her initial motives, how they had changed, what she believed they could still become. When she finished, she set it aside, a confession without absolution. Meanwhile, Dominic stood in his penthouse, staring at the space where Sophia's favorite artwork had hung, a piece depicting two separate paths converging into one. He wondered when exactly he had lost his way and whether it was too late to find his way back. Second chances 3 months passed. Autumn chill gave way to winter's first snow as Sophia hurried along the sidewalk toward the address on the invitation. The Linden Street Gallery reopening had been scheduled with little fanfare, just a small gathering of artists and supporters. Michael greeted her at the door, more animated than she'd seen him in years. "Can you believe it?" he asked, gesturing around the renovated space. "We're actually back." The gallery had been transformed, the original charm preserved but with modern upgrades. New lighting highlighted a carefully curated collection of emerging artists, many of whom had lost showcase opportunities during the recession. "It's perfect," she said, genuinely moved. "How did you manage all this?" Michael's expression turned enigmatic. "The funding came through that arts initiative I told you about. But there's something I haven't mentioned." He nodded toward a plaque near the entrance. "The donor requested anonymity, but I thought you should see this." The dedication read, "In honor of those who remind us that true value can't be calculated and that second chances are worth the risk." Sophia's heart stuttered. "Dominic? He came to see me months ago," Michael confirmed. "Not to apologize exactly, but to listen. Really listen to what happened to us, to others like us." He squeezed her shoulder. "Whatever was between you two, it changed him." Throughout the evening, Sophia kept glancing toward the door, but Dominic never appeared. As guests began to leave, she found herself lingering, helping Michael arrange the closing displays. "You should go talk to him," Michael said quietly. I wouldn't know what to say. Start with the truth. It worked for me. He smiled gently. We've both been carrying anger for too long. Maybe it's time to set it down. The following evening, Sophia stood outside the Vega Capitol building, gathering her courage. The security guard recognized her, hesitating before calling upstairs. To her surprise, she was allowed up. Dominic's office was dimmed, the Manhattan skyline glittering beyond the windows. He stood as she entered, his expression guarded yet somehow hopeful. Michael's gallery looks amazing, she said finally. He has a good eye, like his sister. The tension between them was palpable. Too many unspoken words, too much history to simply brush aside. Why did you do it? She asked. The gallery, the arts fund? Dominic moved toward the window. I told myself it was good business, positive PR, tax benefits. He turned to face her. But we both know that's not true. Then why? Because you made me see clearly for the first time in years what I'd become, what I'd lost. His voice softened. Who I was beneath it all. Sophia stepped closer. I came with ulterior motives. I manipulated my way into your life. And I destroyed your brother's livelihood without a second thought. He shook his head. We've both made mistakes. Where does that leave us? Instead of answering, Dominic opened his desk drawer and removed a familiar envelope, her unsent letter. How did you... You left it in a book at my apartment. I found it weeks after... He met her eyes. I've read it so many times I've memorized parts of it. She felt exposed, vulnerable. And I think we have a choice, he said. We can let our past define us, or we can create something new, something honest this time. He reached for her hand, and after a moment's hesitation, she took it. The contact broke something open between them. Not the passionate intensity of before, but something steadier, more grounded in truth. I'm not the same person I was, Dominic said softly. Neither am I. Outside, snow began to fall, blanketing the city in silent white. They stood together at the window watching it, their reflections overlapping against the darkness beyond, two people learning that redemption doesn't erase the past but offers a different way forward. I can't promise perfection, he whispered. Sophia turned to face him, her hand resting gently against his cheek. I don't want perfection. I want real. When they kissed, it felt like beginning again. A second chance built not on illusions or hidden agendas, but on the understanding that healing comes from honesty, that forgiveness is a choice made daily, and that love, when genuine, can transform even the most guarded hearts. As they left the office together, stepping into the snowy evening, neither knew exactly what lay ahead. But for the first time, they would face it without masks or calculations, just two imperfect people choosing to walk the same path, hand in hand. Ready? Dominic asked. Sophia smiled, squeezing his hand. Ready.